Okay, the next thing that you had mentioned was solving quadratics. They can look all kinds of ways. I know you had a problem like that. You have some that are factored like this, etc. When you're solving a quadratic, all you're doing is figuring out, because if I look at a graph, a quadratic is a U shape, okay? When I solve it, I want to know where it crosses the x-axis, okay? So if you have a graphing calculator, you can actually put it in and find a lot of these if you want. But I'll show you there's several ways to solve them by hand. And that's what this whole next little thing of stuff that I've noticed for you is. So let's start with a basic one first. If I look at this, it's already factored. In other words, I don't have an x squared anywhere. It's just an x. So if I'm taking two numbers and multiplying together and I'm getting 0, one of those has to be a 0. So to figure out what my x value could be in either case, I take each one of these separately and set them equal to 0. So I'm going to say x plus 4 equals 0. So if this is my 0, then I solve minus 4, x equals negative 4. So if I put in negative 4 in here, negative 4 plus 4 obviously makes 0, and 0 times anything is 0, right? Or this could be my 0. X minus 3 equals 0, and I would add 3, and I would get x equals 3. Okay, so now if I plug in 3 here, 3 minus 3 is 0. So if this is 0, 0 times whatever this is 0. So that just means when I'm solving, I'm figuring out what my zeros are. Sometimes they'll call them roots, x-intercepts. It's all the same thing, okay? So if you have it in this form, it is super, super easy. Take each factor. That's when we're looking at that. Each one of those are considered a factor. Take each one and set it equal to whatever's over here and solve, and you're done, okay? So if you have this, that doesn't look like that. I have an x squared, okay? So now I've got to get it in the form of x something, right? I want it to look like the previous one. So this is not too bad because there's not a number other than the understood 1 in front of there, so it makes it real easy. All you have to do on these is say, okay, what's going to multiply to give me negative 8? Okay, so I could have 1 times negative 8, couldn't I? Okay, or I could have 2 times negative 4, or I could have negative 1 times 8, or I could have negative 2 times 4. Does that make sense? All of those will give me negative 8, okay? Now, out of these pairs of numbers, what two numbers, if I add them, will give me negative 2? Well, if I say 1 plus negative 8, that's negative 7, isn't it? If I add them, right? Well, that's not going to work, so it's not that one. Then 2 plus negative 4 is negative 2. Ah, winner, winner, chicken dinner. That's what I want. So I'm going to say plus 2 and minus 4. I just factored that thing. Just like that. These are not that bad. So now it looks like the previous one. So now I know either this is 0 or this is 0. So I'm going to set each one equal to 0 and solve. So x plus 2 equals 0, or x minus 4 equals 0, right? So I'd subtract 2. X would equal negative 2. Here I'd add 4. X equals 4. So either x is 4, and that would make this 0, which would ultimately make this whole thing equal to 0, or x is negative 2, which would make this 0, and then multiply and get 0. Okay, so that's the basics. That's the first video. I'll probably do 2 or 3 videos on this because some of the other ones are a little more complex. Okay, so this is your first video. That'll kind of get you started.